Is this the most disgusting habit that a dog can have? Well, quite possibly, especially after they lick your face. So put a stop to your dog's poop eating once and for all. I'm Dr. Alex. I've been a vet since 2006, and in this video, I'll help you identify what's driving your dog's disgusting behavior and then give you the practical steps that you can take to put an end to it once and for all. And as I run through each of the following causes of coprophagia, which is just the posh word for poop eating, I want you to take a mental note of which one you think is most likely the cause in your dog so that you can then implement the most appropriate action steps when we then switch gear to talk about how to stop your dog poop eating for good. And to start off with, poop eating can actually be imprinted on your dog's brain in their very first weeks of life. So puppies, obviously, they learn a lot from their mothers, and that includes essential hygiene practices. So a mother dog, they meticulously clean their puppies to maintain a sanitary environment and to prevent the spread of diseases and parasites and all that kind of things. And to keep the nest spick and span, this actually includes eating their puppy's poop. This is an instinctive behavior that's deeply rooted in a dog's genetic makeup. And for a puppy, it can be a learned behavior that persists well into adulthood, even when it's not socially acceptable in a puppy-free domestic setting. Next, we've got the fact that a dog's hunger can drive it to seek out unconventional food sources. So if a dog's meals are infrequent, if they're too small, or if they're simply inadequate to satisfy their appetite and calorie requirements, then a dog may resort to eating feces, especially here feces of other animals that may contain a higher amount of fat or protein. But all that said, with 60% of pet dogs in the world being overweight or obese, this cause is not going to be the most common, but it can be an issue, especially in multi-dog households where competition for food can sometimes be pretty intense. Now then, still thinking about diet, a dog's diet, it clearly plays a critical role in the overall health and behavior and well-being of a dog. And if their diet lacks some essential nutrients such as proteins or fiber or essential micronutrients, so our vitamins and minerals, then the dog may turn to coprophagia to compensate. We'll often call this behavior pica, where they will eat unusual non-food substances. This behavior can therefore be a sign of an underlying nutritional imbalance driven by an underlying unbalanced diet. That said, if you're feeding your dog a diet that is complete and balanced for their life stage, so if they're an adult, feeding adult food, if they're a puppy, feeding them a diet designed for growth, because the requirements are very different in that case. You can check on this actually by looking at the packaging and looking for an AFCO and AAFCO formulation statement. That's the most common one. If you're feeding a diet that complies with this, then you can exclude that as the cause. If though you're feeding a homemade diet that has not had the input of a boarded veterinary nutritionist, or are feeding a small boutique brand with maybe unknown or questionable testing, then it's definitely something that's worth considering. And then when it comes to nutritional deficiency, sometimes that doesn't actually come from the diet, but rather an underlying medical condition. So these are diseases where the body's ability to either digest the food or to absorb the nutrients through the gut, or even to utilize their food once it makes it into the body, becomes compromised. So there's a few big ones here. Exocrine pancreatic insufficiency, or EPI, is not particularly common, but is a big cause of this. Pancreatitis, again, another problem with the pancreas. Intestinal infections, malabsorption syndromes, inflammatory bowel disease type abnormalities, and also hormonal problems can sometimes cause this. All that said, eating poop, it's unlikely to be the only symptom that you notice of an underlying medical condition. Your dog they may have diarrhea. Their stool color might be strange. So with EPI, it's typically kind of a gray, greasy, white kind of color, not a typical brown. It may well be that your dog is drinking more. It may be that they're losing weight despite actually eating well. So anything unusual should really trigger an investigation by your vet. The next cause is anxiety. So anxiety can manifest in many different ways, including various compulsive behaviors. So that can be over grooming, it can be pacing. But a stressed out dog may turn to coprophagia as a way to cope and to self-soothe and to alleviate this anxiety. The behavior can also be a coping mechanism for dogs experiencing separation anxiety, for fear of loud noises, just general stress. Another cause of anxiety that can lead to poop eating is that if your dog has been scolded for defecating somewhere where they weren't supposed to in the past, especially if they are a little bit of a more nervous disposition, then they may actually be driven to kind of hide the evidence if it happens again, or just even hide the evidence when they normally go to the toilet, even if it's in the right place. And they do this by eating their stool. And then another behavioral reason for poop eating is that a bored dog can result to a number of different activities in an attempt to bring some variety, just some stimulation to their life. And while for some that might mean being destructive, so chewing on the furniture or destroying your slippers, for others, it can be eating their stool. So boredom, it really is a very common issue for pet dogs. It's going to depend on their situation, but many are left alone for long periods of time while we're at work or at school. Even if we're working from home, we're not actually paying our dog any attention, and they're really left to their own devices. So it's a really common issue, one that I believe it drives a large number of dogs to eat their own stool. So with all that being said, hopefully by now you've got a little bit of an idea of what could be driving your dog to eat their own feces. I honestly believe, as with everything, if we don't understand the why, we can't accurately and effectively go about optimizing the strategy to stop that. And so now that you've identified this why, as I go through the strategies to put a stop to it, you can start by implementing those that are most relevant to you, that you think will work best with your dog in their situation, with their potential underlying motivation, if we can call it motivation, to eat their own poop. If that's not effective, then adding in all these other strategies are also going to help. So the first step is the simplest, but it's also the one that makes the most difference, and that is promptly cleaning up after your dog. It's essential to minimize the opportunities they have to indulge in coprophagia. You really want to set your dog up for success, so removing any temptation to indulge in this supposedly tasty meal is really important. And in fact, I'd go so far as to say that if this step isn't implemented as effectively as possible, within the confines of your lifestyle and your work commitments and all that kind of thing, then the other strategies have a much less chance of being successful. And while this means cleaning up after your dog as soon as is practically possible, it also means keeping all living areas or areas your dog has access to poop free, not just their poop, but the poop from any other animals that share these environments. Next, double check your dog's diet. Check that they comply with the AFCO guidelines for their life stage, so that growth, like I spoke about, the adult dog, the older dog. If in doubt, if you can't see it on the packaging, contact the manufacturer. If you can't get a straight answer, then change to a more appropriate diet. If you're home preparing your dog's meals, then checking who formulated that recipe. Is it actually someone who is suitably qualified? The term nutritionist is not a protected term, and it could simply mean that someone has spent a couple of weeks doing a few hours of online training and filled out a multi-choice questionnaire at the end to become a certified nutritionist. That absolutely is a real thing. So another consideration is optimizing your dog's microbiome. Now, there's no evidence that I'm aware of that will definitely help with poop eating, but if there's any query about gut health, about overall health, then I think this is a really important step. And for this, I'm talking about adding prebiotics and adding probiotics to your dog's diet. Some diets have these baked in, and I've got other videos on the channel all about optimizing the microbiome. Next step, let's make your dog's stool less appealing. Although, to be honest, it's probably not the tastiest option for them, but there are ways that we can kind of repel a dog from being attracted to their stool. There are commercial taste deterrent sprays, there are additives that can be applied to their food or directly to their feces. There's also some homemade deterrents, so something like pineapple. Adding pineapple to a dog's diet, some people will swear by that. Adding something hot and spicy directly onto the stools, all can help creating a negative association and put them off eating their poop in the future. And while it'd be wonderful if simply adding something to your dog's diet was successful, to be honest, very often this will result in failure, especially if it's the only thing that's carried out. Then kind of considering gut health and total body health, keeping that in mind. If there is any thought of there being a medical condition in your dog, then we need to get that addressed. That could be because of their stool characteristics. Maybe that's changed. Maybe their weight is dropping. Maybe there's changes in their coat. Maybe they have an increased thirst. If there's anything that you don't think is 100%, then a checkup with your vet is definitely a good idea, because if we don't address an underlying medical problem, our chances of getting on top of the poop eating greatly reduce, quite aside from the fact that we want to make sure our dog is as healthy as possible. And then, of course, even if you think your dog is 100% healthy, if you're implementing some of these other strategies and you're not really getting anywhere, then a checkup with your vet is never going to hurt. So next is addressing any boredom that may be driving this behavior. So providing plenty of mental stimulation, physical exercise can really help to kind of redirect your dog's energy and reduce boredom. So, daily walks, several walks a day, playtime, actually engaging with your dog, focusing on them one-on-one. Interactive toys can also help keep your dog stimulated at other times. So here we're thinking about puzzle toys, training sessions, enrichment activities, just feeding them outside of the food bowl, using other mechanisms to feed your dog, working on foraging games or scent work, just to challenge your dog's brain. And not only will this help to put a stop to the poop eating, it's also going to significantly improve their quality of life, because a dog who's sitting home all day with no stimulation really is not living their best life. With training and interaction in mind, then, actually focusing training on a couple of key commands can be really beneficial with stopping this behavior. And here I'm thinking of a leave it command and also a come command, a really good recall. It can be invaluable. So by teaching your dog to leave feces alone and to respond to your commands, you can effectively redirect their behavior. Positive reinforcement techniques such as praise and treats are really important. Don't negatively train your dog. So don't use reprimands, don't use force and punishment. That's going to be counterproductive and even drive the behavior further. And the other benefit of this training is it's going to help keep your dog safe at other times. So should they decide to shoot off chasing after that squirrel, or if you drop a pill of your own medication and your dog is going to eat it, having these commands at your fingertips that are really well obeyed and reinforced is going to be really valuable at keeping your dog safe. And then thinking of that negative reinforcement with punishment-based training, anxiety, we need to address any underlying anxiety. So if you suspect that that's a problem, if your dog is quite anxious, if they're experiencing kind of fear, if they're nervous in lots of different times in their life, then actually having a consultation with your vet or with an animal behaviorist is going to be really valuable to come up with an effective long-term management strategy, because by and large, there's no really quick fixes when it comes to behavioral problems. All that being said, though, there are other techniques that you can try. So there's like the calming pheromones. There are dietary supplements. We can use thunder shirts, gentle massage, using calming music. They're all techniques that are accessible to you kind of here and now and today that may well make a big difference. Again, the big one is to not scold your dog if you find them eating their stools, or if they defecate in an area where you would rather they didn't, because that's only going to drive them to hide the evidence. If you remember, they are eating their stools to hide the evidence of that behavior. But then, having said all that, if boredom and anxiety are the biggest causes of poop eating, which is something that I believe, just what are the detailed and specific steps that you can take? How can you effectively train your dog? Well, I spoke to a dog trainer all about that in this wide-ranging conversation. So tap on that video. I'll see you there. But until the next time, I'm veterinarian Dr. Alex. This is Our Pet's Health, because they're family.